Today's episode has been brought to you by Schedulicity.
Welcome to episode 97 of the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. Today is a consultation call with Susan Hopkinson, writer, mother, and yoga therapist. Susan talks to us today about wanting to niche down and teach more one-on-one yoga after teaching group classes for over 20 years. Susan gave me permission to share this call with you because it is such a good example of how a very experienced yoga teacher with so much wisdom to share and offer faces the same issues that a newer yoga teacher will face. I can speak for myself in this that we are all afraid at some point to niche down and to create content and share it out with the world, no matter what channel we choose. A shout out of thanks for 2 reviews from yoga teachers. Ashu wrote, a fantastic resourceful platform to learn about all things connected to teaching yoga. Thank you so much for sharing that. Also, SB, who I know personally, who has an amazing, beautiful yoga studio in Hanover, Ontario, shared, love this show, especially if you are passionate about yoga and you want to continue to learn. Thank you so much to both of you. It means a lot when you share a review either on our Facebook page or through iTunes, and we try and read each and every one of them on the podcast. So if you're listening in real time, I also want to say Happy New Year soon. The new year for me is a blank slate, a blank page, and I'm hoping that today's episode might bring some inspiration into your own yoga business. If you're new here, my name is Shannon Crow. I'm a mother of 3, a yoga teacher, and a trainer and consultant working for yoga teachers. This podcast was created for you, so you can connect to information and inspiration every single week and feel supported. Because this can be a lonely road as you navigate the jungles of yoga entrepreneurship. Have you checked out our show notes yet? This one, including all of the links, and there are some really helpful links, can be found at theconnectedyogateacher.com/97. It is because of our amazing team, Samantha, Susan, and Crunch, that all of this comes together into a pretty package of show notes and audio for you, ready to go every single week. So I need to say a huge thank you to the team, and also just an exciting let's do this for 2019 to you and to our team. Another part of our team is Schedulicity. They're our podcast sponsor. They're our sponsor because I love their company, and I was talking about their company all of the time and they noticed. So before we meet Susan today, let's hear our hot tip of the week from Allison over at Schedulicity.
Hello, Connected Yoga Teachers. This is Allison with the Schedulicity Hot Tip of the Week. Nervous to declare yourself a master of a new yoga niche? Schedulicity makes it easy to try it out. Edit your business listing and feature your new focus prominently. You can talk about your training in your provider bio while introducing yourself and your expertise. At classes, workshops, or one-on-one appointments that highlight your specialization. Then, spread the word to your clients and watch your new offerings fill up. You'll be surprised how many people can't wait to grow with you.
Thank you so much, Allison. I love how Team Schedulicity makes us customized hot tips every week. It warms my heart because they really care about the topics you care about as a yoga teacher. Because Allison said something today about our profile, I decided to go and check mine out. And guess what? It needed to be updated. This is because the niche work that I do in my own business is a process. It's an ongoing thing. And this is why it's maybe a good idea, a good reminder to go visit your website or your bio, or maybe your profile on Schedulicity on a regular basis and update it. Thanks for the nudge, Allison. That really helped. I'm so excited to share this call with you and to have you meet Susan. Susan started practicing yoga in 1985, and then she became a yoga teacher in 1998. She's a yoga therapist who has studied with many teachers from all over the world, including Europe, India, and North America. Susan believes in teaching people, not poses, and you are going to hear in today's episode how she's wanting to teach more one-on-one yoga instead of group classes, and how she's wondering how to talk about and market her niche yoga offering. I just want to share one part of this. I believe that every single yoga teacher has a unique offering. People say all the time, it's all yoga. And I agree, it definitely is all yoga. And at the same time, when you hear someone like Susan and you see how she weaves in mindfulness-based therapy, Ayurveda, Tantra, astrology, and Buddhist philosophy, you can see why telling someone how unique this yoga is both really beneficial to the student and to Susan, and at the same time, not always easy to do on a website or on social media. It's a process of clarifying our message and letting our students know what it is we offer. On top of writing and teaching yoga, Susan also offers retreats in both Europe and India. She now lives in Brussels, Belgium, and she moved there from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, which is not far from me. Let's dive in and meet Susan. Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher Podcast, Susan. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. And it's really great to be with you.
So tell me about the work that you do and who you do it for right now.
So right now I'm working a lot with, I would say mostly women, although I do work with men as well, but they're people who are in often high stress situations in transition. And they work on issues a lot to do with things like burnout, anxiety, overwhelm. It can be also a simple matter of having to transition from one phase of life to another. For example, having children, or they might need to be moving, not just moving house, but moving country in a lot of cases, because I live in Brussels and people are from everywhere. And so my clients are everywhere. They're both here from everywhere and they're around the world from everywhere. And so a lot of them are in diplomatic service, or they're in some kind of multinational company or a big organization which has them moving around. Or if it's not them, it's their life partner that's moving around. And then there's all this, the stress of reestablishing oneself and then checking the schools and making sure the children are taken care of. In most cases, they have kids, and then reestablishing their career as well. So there's a lot of stress around that. I do. I'm a yoga therapist, and so when I work with people, I work on having them find a mindset that goes with what's happening to them. So we work a lot with the mind. I help them with things like simple things, diet, helping them to structure their day, what we call dinacharya, this planning around their day, so that they can feel that they've got some kind of pattern to work with. And then the other part of what I do is people who are actually quite ill. And that illness, again, can come in different forms. It can be anything from back pain and niggly physical pains, or it can be cancer and more chronic issues. So we do whatever is necessary around that as well.
And so when you're working with people who are in high stress transitions or when they're ill, how does the work that you do, first of all, how would you define it? Would you define it as yoga therapy for those people?
Yeah, I mean, I'm using that in really broad strokes because I have a lot of different modalities that I work with. I work with, it foundationally was always yoga, and then that broadened into yoga therapy. I've been a yoga therapist since 2007, and I am passionate about Ayurveda, so I work a lot with Ayurveda. I also work with astrology. I combine all of those elements together to try and help either from a medical place or from a psychological place, or just I shouldn't say just, or a spiritual place, because that often is really the root cause of all of the difficulties. But this is a kind of a palette that I offer people, and it'll never be the same thing twice. So
Right.
when I work with yoga, I'm not working, I would say 90% of the time, I'm not working with postural yoga.
Right.
I'm working with yoga around mindset, around focus, around working with mudra, working with mantra, working with all the different aspects of yoga that are a little bit more obscure nowadays, and but which is really what brings a lot of support. So we do use the asana, and most of the time it's not that is really going to bring the difference or the big changes that they need in their life. And
Right.
so the asana is there as a physical support, and it's nice, makes them feel great, makes them feel alive, and reconnects them to something a little bit less maybe intellectual or mentally stimulating, and it helps them to be back in their body. But then beyond that, we need to do more.
Right. Well, it makes sense when we look at the 8 limbs that the asana is just a very small piece of that, and that there's
Exactly.
a lot more to it. Okay, that gives me a great
Exactly.
understanding of sort of who you're working with and what the work is. And I think I read in your bio, you work with the individual.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
has been a really big, important part of my work. And that's one of the reasons why I've been slowly creeping away and, increasingly so away from what I would have taught as a yoga class 20 years ago.
Right.
Um, so I set out like most people teaching a kind of a general yoga class, but I've never been able to teach a system. Like it's just, it's not in my DNA. I can't. I feel like something is missing, or that I'm not serving these people in front of me if I try and teach them just a kind of a bunch of postures. And I see that each and every one of them is dealing with something different, or they're responding in a different way. And I can't go on from beyond that point. I need to stop and sort of backtrack and go into what each person wants. And so what I've been doing is following on from that, just individualizing more and more and more, and finding that actually working individually with people is just far more targeted, and I can really help people go deep into transformation. And it's still wonderful to be able to do a group session.
Well, how are you finding your current one-on-one people that you're working with in this really niche way? Like in this really you've drilled down, you've found what your yoga offering is, over many years and many different trainings, and now you want to work one-on-one with people in this particular way. And so how do those people generally find you now?
I would say a lot of people come to me through word of mouth. I would consider that my greatest source of people. Um, And besides that, it really is my website, I would say, that drives people. But my website is a bit wishy-washy as well, because I know that it's got way too much, it contains way too many things, and it's not very targeted. And I need to improve that as well. That's something I'm aware of. And as I mentioned already, I'm not particularly techie, so that kind of thing is always the last thing on my list of things to do. It's like just the penultimate thing before accounting, basically.
Right.
And so I need to upgrade my website so that I can have, when people are keying in search words, that they can really find me. Where previously, if you typed in, say yoga in Brussels, I would be the first one to come up. And that went on for years like that, because of the nature of my website, and also just the amount of attention that I was cultivating. And that has no longer, it doesn't serve me, because people are still looking for yoga classes, and they'll still come on my site. And then I have to say, well, I'm really sorry, I'm not doing that anymore. But you're welcome to try this, but that's not what they're looking for. So I get a lot of people coming that are the wrong people, if you see what I mean.
Okay.
They're people who are um, being drawn to what I used to do, which is no longer what I'm trying to offer right now. And so I need to clean up my act somehow in that way, and get a lot more targeted in the way that I present myself.
Okay, so it sounds like if someone goes to your website now, there's some confusion for them, or maybe they're hoping that you will also teach group classes, or
I
you
do
rank
I
for.
do get a lot of people asking me to come back and teach, and I honestly I feel I actually have to work on the guilt around that because I feel like there is a certain pull where I stopped for my own reasons. I had an accident that caused a lot of trouble around my hip as well, and there was a series of falls that were like consecutive after the accident, and so it was as much for me that I also chose to stop, as well as the fact that it just felt right.
Yeah.
But my students weren't ready, so we have to work on non-attachment and also on just the fact that there's a lot of other great yoga teachers here that people can rely on, and they're really wanting to do those classes. They're really into doing the yoga classes, and that's great because there was a time when I did too, and that I know that enthusiasm is no longer there. It's just
Yeah.
shifted. I value all those years that I did that, and I see the value in the yoga classes, and yet I also feel like I'm just on a different trajectory right now. I really need to. I feel like I want to get much more clear in this path and be seen much more in that therapeutic way. Um,
So let's just dig in a little bit to the guilt part of things. You said a few things. So I heard you say that there are other great yoga teachers who are teaching group in your area. So you can know that those students are still going to find a community class which has value.
yeah,
Some people really want to go for the community aspect. And from all that you're telling me, it sounds like you have really amazing gifts to offer someone one-on-one, and that it's more than what you can offer in a group class, and you're just done with that. You don't want to offer the group class. So I mean, I think every yoga teacher, when they shift directions and they've had a group class or they've offered something and then they stop offering it. For myself, I know it was for me, it was really Thai yoga massage. I used to offer that. And then those people are all like, now what? So I sent them out an email and said, here are some other people in our area that offer Thai yoga massage. You may even want a place on your website that links to a few teachers that you're happy
that's a
to.
great idea. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Those teachers will be happy as well. They'll see the traffic from your website. If it goes to their website, you can kind of track that also. And they may then refer people to you when people are saying, I want to work more one on one yoga therapy, for people who are dealing with stress, transitions, or illness. And
Yeah,
you may even reach out to these yoga teachers and send them an email saying, I've been getting so many requests for group class, and
yeah,
this isn't what I offer anymore. And here's what I do. So you get to make this two-way bridge for
yeah,
those yoga teachers where you're getting referrals. Word of mouth is always number one.
yeah.
So that increases that word of mouth. I wouldn't rule out the existing students that you have. I wouldn't rule
Yeah,
out the
they do
people.
come back. People will come back, but not in the same way. They're happy to evolve along with me. So there is a good portion of people that do that. But um, I feel I can see, who clicks on newsletters and things like that, and I can see that there's a kind of a wishy-washy bunch. There's an enthusiastic bunch, and then there's this kind of wishy-washy bunch, and then there's the other students who really did want the yoga classes, and they're very politely not unsubscribing, and
Right.
so they're receiving, but they don't necessarily click and read.
Okay. And so the second part that we want to do to your website, so there might be a section down below where it says, if you are interested in group classes, here's the thing. I think to put together kind of a template for that email as well, you can probably go back and look at an email that you've received and just include in those links to people who have group classes.
Hmm.
And then let's look at if your website is speaking to your audience. So is it saying somewhere right away that you help people who are dealing with stress, illness, transitions? Is that on your homepage?
It's not on my homepage. It's more, my homepage is kind of a bit too general, I think.
Right.
It's more
Okay.
like, yeah, so I need to be more targeted with that.
Yeah, you do. I think this niching down is not easy work.
Mm,
We sometimes think that when we niche down, we're going to limit the number of people that come and engage with us and book with us. But what actually happens is we want that website to really speak to someone in particular.
yeah,
You could niche down as far as saying, I work with people who are dealing with the transition of moving, and you will
right.
still, people will be like, that's me. Whereas if they go to your website and they just see it's generally about yoga, I mean, they can find that everywhere. So I'm not saying niche down to only people that are moving.
Yeah, yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's got to be something that resonates with at least some people.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think it's too general.
So start to look at the languaging. We want to know immediately when we get to your homepage who you work for, who you
Yeah,
work with, and what you offer them,
right.
sort of what they get out of working with you. I'm jumping in here, connected yoga teachers, because I want to ask, do you see your own niche story in my conversation with Susan? Do you feel like your website or your content could be a bit more pointed to bring in your ideal yoga students? We got into a lot of talk about Susan's website content, the keywords she's using, her SEO, that search engine optimization, and a little bit around testimonials. It was very pointed to her own yoga business, so I've taken all of that out. Including it here won't be helpful to you. But the main point, the main thing that I want to ask you is when someone goes to your website, do they know what you offer? And can they say, hey, that's for me? For example, prenatal yoga is for pregnant people. Is your website, is your social media post really speaking to who you want to serve? And is it telling them what it is that you offer? Next, I asked Susan what questions she was being asked in relation to the one-on-one work she wants to offer. And we talked about using that to fuel the content she was creating in her newsletter. Listen in.
I do a newsletter every 2 weeks. So every new and full moon, I have a newsletter.
Right. Is there a call to action at the end of your newsletter to book with you?
You'll be very proud of me. Only literally in the last, I think 2 or 3 months, I started doing that after years of writing a newsletter. I finally got clear that all I need to say is after I say, love Susan, I need to write. By the way, if you want to work with me, click here. And it really took me that long because I wasn't really. I'm just not tuned in that way. I'm not a good business person. It's not my forte, and so I don't think along those lines. I'm like, if they want to come, they'll come. But of course, it doesn't work like that. You have to kind of set the stage and make it easy for people. And I'm starting to get that now. It's not like I'm pushing them. It's just making it easier. I'm seeing that.
It's most of the time it's that people have no idea what you do offer. And I
Right.
don't mean you specifically. I mean all yoga teachers, even myself. If I meet up with a friend, they're like, "Oh, are you still doing that yoga thing?" But they really have no idea beyond that what I
Right.
do offer.
Right.
Um, Even people that I'm very close to. I bumped into someone this week, and she's like, "You do this yoga for pelvic health?" I had no idea. So people, if we look at it as yoga teachers in a different light, if we look at it as those people who are needing the services that we provide, they actually aren't getting those services when we don't put the message out there. So
Yeah.
we're being a little bit selfish, not we're not meaning to be. We're doing it in exactly the way you said is I'll do this great thing and then word will just get around and then people will find me. Very rarely does that actually work. And then the people who really need the help aren't getting it. So let's think of the people that are dealing with a transition, dealing with illness, dealing with stress. like you said, have someone in their family who's just been diagnosed with cancer, or maybe they have. If you put the message out there, think of the help that you can give to that person. So it's not trying to be salesy, slimy marketing. It's just saying, here are my offerings.
Yeah.
If we sold homemade baked pies, we wouldn't sit at home in our kitchen and just keep baking amazing pies. We'd have to go out and put them out on a shelf somewhere and stand there and tell people what's in your pie.
Right. Yeah, sure.
So I completely understand this this reluctant attitude towards marketing, but I think it's so important if we can look at it that way. So I'm glad to hear that you have that call to action in your newsletter. I started adding to mine just a PS at the bottom because I know a lot of people just skim all the way down to the bottom of a newsletter.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that. I'm a top to bottom reader, and then I always land on certain very well written newsletters, and it's like, hey, all you skimmers, this is for you. And I'm like, wow, do people do that? They'll skip all the content and go to the bottom. It's like, what's so special about the bottom? I apparently it's a really good place to be. So, so
my next question for your email, your newsletter, it sounds like you put a lot of effort into it. And so my next question would be, are you putting that content onto your website?
So that just it appears as a blog on my website.
The newsletter.
So what is in the newsletter is partly timely announcements. Like I'm organizing a sangha, a meditation sangha once a month, for example. So it'll just be the date of that. And then it's also my blog about the astrology and about whatever topical thing I bring up. And both of those blogs are directly put to the website. So they're in both places. So
okay, great.
I only put like the first paragraph or two, maybe
in your newsletter, and then they have to go to your website.
To go to the site. So you see, there are a few things that I've cottoned onto, but it took me a while. And then again, I can see who's really interested because I can see who actually reads the newsletter itself, and then I can see who clicks through, and so it helps me to see what interest there is in certain things and among what sort of group of people.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's already kind of, we're working towards understanding better, but then the thing is that I don't really know what to do with that information. Like people are always talking to me about, I have to establish click funnels and all these things. And I'm just like, don't even go there. I don't know. I just don't even know where to begin with that kind of thing. And I'm not a substantial business. And so I don't have the budget to ask somebody to be like a personal assistant or something who could do all that stuff for me. So at this point, it's just me doing it all.
What what service are you using for your newsletter?
I use something called Namaste Light.
Okay. I don't know if I've ever heard of this one.
Okay. It's I've been using it now 4 or 5 years, and it's not a very big company, but it is an ethical company, and they work especially with yoga teachers, and they work with massage therapists and everybody who's in this kind of world. And when you send out a campaign, for each campaign you send out, they plant a tree.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's really quite cool. And they're just a really friendly, good bunch of people. So unfortunately, it doesn't have the same integration capacity as something like MailChimp or the other bigger ones. But for my purposes, I prefer this, and it feels more in line with what I want to do. So I try to keep my business in line with my yoga.
I'm popping in again here, Connected Yoga Teachers, because I want to tell you that then I asked Susan if she has other channels for where she shares content other than her website and her newsletter. We talked about the studio that she's connected to and the option of offering workshops there. Susan told me that she's also working on a book. Then we talked about her social media channels.
I run hot and cold on social media. I have my own personal account on Facebook. which I variously put sort of philosophical and yoga things as well as personal things, but I don't put a lot of personal things on there. Um, and then I have a page, which is the page that I established for my yoga center, which was called Inspiration, and that's the name of my business, Inspiration. And so I continue with that page, although I'm no longer advertising specific, weekly events, but I just keep posting inspiring things just to keep things going. I have, I think now it's like 460 people, or just a little over that, I think. And so I have a little audience. And then on Instagram, I've had an Instagram account, I think, since 2010. And I think I've posted 12 pictures to Instagram, most of which are my dog.
Right.
So
Okay.
I am not a huge fan. I find it, I don't object to it, but I find it hard to use it because I don't feel like I have that kind of a visual job, and a lot of people who teach yoga, will always do the pose, in nature, or me in my kitchen doing God knows what, and it's just never been me. I can't.
Right.
I can't. That's not for me. That does not represent yoga, and so I the Instagram thing has not really sunk in, and I know that that's where a lot of the business is for yoga.
What if you looked at it, because I completely agree that sometimes it can be hard to depict the yoga that is not asana in an Instagram photo. But what if you looked at it in terms of what are some things that you really believe in? So let me give you a bit of homework on this.
Okay.
If you were to list off 15 things, I believe statements, 15 things that relate to your yoga business. And
Mhm.
these can be things that could be controversial. So
Mhm. It will, coming from me, it will likely be, yeah.
this will push some people away. So,
Okay.
for instance, I hear from you, I believe that I am a more effective teacher with an individual than I am with a group. I mean, that might be, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I hear that message coming through. So, you could write out these I believe statements, and they're
Right.
not going to be the same as other people, but that is your unique messaging. So, those
Right.
things should be the content in your website and any sort of social post. Now, if you decided you wanted to take those 15 things and kind of make some quotes with them, or some statements that you wanted to even go deeper on your website, or say an Instagram post or a Facebook post, you can.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're just sitting there in the background. So this I believe list is really powerful. If you feel like it's more than 15, you can. And when that
Yeah.
message goes out, you're going to push away the people that are like, say, you don't want to work with people who want hot vinyasa flow group yoga, right?
Right.
And so they'll look at that list and they'll think, well, this is not the teacher for me. But on the opposite, other people will say, oh my gosh, that is exactly how I feel. Or, wow, I never thought of it that way. I'm curious to know more.
Right.
The other
Yeah, that's
piece,
great because I can actually tie in what I'm writing
yeah.
and pull it from the book into some kind of post like that.
Great. I mean, you're writing a book, which means you have oodles of content. Oodles. Like you could probably take a sentence or two from that book, and that's your social media post, or that's something that you write in your newsletter, or your or on your website. Now, I want to drill down into finding, when do you want to book with, so currently, how many people are you working on an average week? How many people are you working with one-on-one in the way that you want to?
I would say I don't have an average week. It's
Okay.
very variable, and I would say probably I only get 8 clients a week, where I really want to do at least double that. I mean, it
Okay.
needs to be. I'm working around the margins, and I've deliberately blocked off time to write. So that is also why I'm not seeing so many people, because I'm not available, and that won't last forever. That's just a temporary thing. And I would really like to see 15 to 20 people in a week, ideally.
Okay. Susan and I talked through her calendar. She has time for writing, time for travel to consider. We got into some of the details of her book that she's writing and how it relates to her travel calendar. Then we started to talk about how her calendar was feeling really broken up into little snippets. Listen to how that part of our call went, because I think it could be helpful for you. What if instead, and you just take a look at your calendar,
Yeah.
and let's chunk together those days. So when you have 8 bookings in a week, let's just take that as an example. Are you booking those all on the same day?
I try and push them together. I try to push them into at least 3 days where I have then times completely free.
Mhm.
And that ostensibly is supposed to be for me to do other things. And then, doesn't always work that way. But yes, so that's the plan. And it works relatively well because previously I was teaching what felt like teaching on demand and just being pulled in every direction. And the pendulum has swung completely to the opposite direction, where before I was teaching, evenings and mornings and afternoons and lunchtime and
Right.
weekends. And it was like, yeah, you want me to be there, I'll be there. And I just can't anymore. And now I'm just like, sorry, I'm just not free. You'll have to wait 3 weeks. And
So it sounds like you've worked the baby steps, and they're not little baby steps. These are big steps to time blocking and really setting your schedule for what you'd like. So to work this a little bit more, let's look at your calendar and see, do you really want to? So there's a difference between how many people do you want to book with and how many people do you need to book with.
Right. Okay.
So
Here's the original number I gave you was a need to.
the 16.
16 would be a need to actually make a proper living, being able to do what I do. I
Okay.
think that's financially necessary because I've taken a lot of I've taken a huge financial cut by stepping back so much from work, and it's not
Okay.
sustainable.
Okay. So
Mm,
you know that if this is the main work, so here's the thing, this for right now, we can look at it as the main work, and it might evolve and change to be something else. Like for a while, you've put the book as the main work
yeah,
and
yeah,
different things, and that takes a while to pay off as well. So
yeah.
let's look at just the bookings for right now. If that's your main work, when can you, looking at your calendar, book in 16 people in a week? And I'm not asking for the date right now,
Mhm.
unless you know it.
Yeah.
But what I'd like you to do is, as your homework, is to look at your calendar and say, like, it might not be feasible until things are over in November, and then December might be different. So you might be looking at January. But what I want you
I
to
think
do,
actually I am,
yeah,
given everything that's coming up. Because I only have 2 weeks in October, two
mhm,
weeks in November, and essentially 2 weeks in December because I'm also in India until mid-December. But in Brussels, it's very different to in Canada or in the States where people kind of work right through. Here, people just switch off at the first whiff of a holiday and they're gone. And so December kind of fizzles out by mid-December,
yeah,
which is when I'm coming back. So I don't expect much to happen anyway in the end of December. I'm thinking more in terms of finishing my book and getting that as my project so I can launch it as a New Year's thing, which was supposed to be like a September thing, but it's now going to be a New Year's
it's not
thing.
bad. It's not
Uh,
bad. That's not that far off for that kind of a
yeah, yeah.
launch.
So this is I think more for January. Then I think then I can
Okay.
properly look at that.
So when people decide that they want to book with you in January, is that, or anytime, is it easy for them to book? Can they go to your website and book?
Yeah, I have a booking system now that it's called Calendly, but I'm going to
Hmm.
switch that. Schedulicity doesn't work in Europe, so I
I
can't use
know.
that. Otherwise, I know it's a great system and a very generous system because they don't charge you up to a certain point. Where with
Hmm.
other systems you pay regardless. I'm going to switch to another system, the name of which I can't think of at the moment, but it's prettier and better, easier to block time and so on.
Okay.
But nonetheless, that will be there all the way through. Like it's people
Great. That's great.
Click on
That's
the link.
great to know. So you can set that up now
Mm,
for January. You
yeah,
can find those 16 spots and preferably in together.
yeah,
And that way, you know, when you wake up, say on a Tuesday, you're like, that's the day that I book with people.
right.
And I want to say also block off your lunchtime in that.
Yes, yeah. I forgot to do that for most of my Saturdays, and my Saturdays looked like a nightmare. And during the week I blocked off lunchtime, but forgot on the Saturday to do that. But normally I do. It was
Yeah.
just an oversight, and then
Because we just don't work very well. We're working right through. I made that mistake. And so
yeah,
what it starts to look like, and I think what will help with your mindset on this, you're big into mindset, is you'll not be working from the place of, oh my gosh, I need to get 16 people or I won't be able to survive. It takes you out of that and moves it into, I only have 16 spots a week. I have 8 full, which means I really only have 8 left.
right,
And so just that can make such a difference in your business.
right.
Also, I would really encourage you to put it somewhere. Like I like a sticky note right near my computer near my office of my goal. Like my goal is to book in 16 people a week as of the first week of January. And when you look at that every day, you'll be thinking, how can I do that?
Mm-hmm.
And then it makes it so focused. When you said, you know, you have an Instagram and it's your dog, which I love, by the way, and then your newsletter and your website, it doesn't matter what channel you choose to focus on.
Mm,
The main goal is to get a booking.
right.
The people that you work with one-on-one, did they sort of book every week or 2 weeks or do they book with you a certain time and then they're gone?
It's variable. There's a small percentage that books kind of once and then they don't come back. Then there's another group of people who work on an issue, a therapeutic issue, and so there's like 5 sessions. We tend to do it by 5 sessions,
Mhm.
and then they'll do that, and then maybe do another 5 or something like that. And then there's people who come back semi regularly because they kind of want to tune up, or they are going through an issue in a kind of a compressed way, and so they'll come every week, but only for say 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah. The reason I ask that is because I would like to see you reach out to the people who you've served. So if they're
Okay.
on a separate list and you send them out an email before January and you let them know if
Yeah.
you're, it doesn't matter if you're still working with them or you're not, you just let them know that you have 8 more spots that you want to fill, or you don't have to be that specific about it,
Mhm.
but that you have some spots to fill, some spaces open if they'd like to tell their friends and if
Good.
it's served them well. I just think sometimes we have to make the ask
Right.
because you know that it's word of mouth.
Hmm.
Sometimes we feel uncomfortable with that, but when you come at it from a place of, I only have 8 spots left for that week, first week in January,
Right. Yeah.
it shifts the mindset.
Yeah, that's great actually, because it is it immediately, just the way you say that is very different. Just hearing you
Mhm.
say that, it's very different.
That's what I did with my Thai yoga massage. I wanted to have 4 bookings a week.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking, I was struggling to get 1 or 2. And as soon as I thought, I only have 4. And
Right.
when people would go to book with me, I'm then booking them 1 or 2 weeks out,
Right.
you know, and it's worked the same way with my consultation calls. You
Right.
know, for a while I was like, oh my gosh, look at that day. So when that day is really open, when you hit those days, that's when you need to look at your little goal on your sticky note or wherever you have it and think, how can I get more people? So you
Right.
know that the goal is 16 a week. There are a couple of tricks that I use. I like to actually put sticky notes on my wall and write down the people who are booked. So you can write down those 8 people for that first week of January.
Mhm.
And then put in pencil the people who you would really like to see there.
Right. Ah, okay.
I
Yeah.
recently did
So each sticky note is a person.
mhm,
Yeah.
it's so visual, like
Yeah.
it really opens the brain up to thinking, how can I get that person to go? I did a yoga teacher training this past weekend and I was about to send out an email. And then I thought, you know what? I know like 8 yoga teachers who I could really see benefiting from this training and then taking it out and using it in the community. I'm just going to private message those people. And I made it really personal. I was like, oh, this is going to take some time to message 8 people.
Yeah.
Out of those 8 people, 3 of them showed up to the yoga teacher training. Like that's
wow.
a really high conversion rate.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
Whereas if it's a generic email, they're just like, yeah, whatever. So
exactly. And you know these people and they trust you. And that's the whole thing. When somebody knows that it's a personal request or a personal invitation, it changes everything.
it does. And they're just going to say no if it doesn't fit for them. And so I wonder if you reach out to some of the people who you haven't seen for a while, and that could be through that newsletter. They're maybe already signed up for your newsletter.
Yeah, they are. And most of the people that I see also receive my newsletter, except the odd sort of individual who came through word of mouth, sort of discreetly. Some people actually don't want to be. For example, I'm working with a woman burnout, and at the moment, and we're actually working on her embarrassment and her shame around it. And so some people don't actually want to acknowledge that they're even doing this kind of thing. So it's very different. It's not, you can't approach them in the same way in a marketing setting. Because this is the challenge with yoga therapy and the more therapeutic things that I do, which is that you're dealing with somebody's fragility. You're dealing with something quite sensitive. And so often it's just enough to get them over the hump, and then they feel better, they get on with life, but they don't need to come back to me necessarily, because that part of their life has been resolved, or that thing has been resolved. So the repeat client doesn't necessarily work for a yoga therapist. The way I look at it is, if you have repeat clients, it's because you're not doing your job. So it's kind of like you put yourself out of your own market, and that's the way I look at it. And that's probably why I'm broke most of the time. But the point is that's how I see the work. It's not, I find it difficult to keep getting high turnover because I don't want people to be dependent on me.
Right.
I want them to learn discernment and become independent through the practice of yoga. And if I'm the person that they need to rely on, and I used to do this when I had yoga students, regularly every week that would see me, then I'd go away and they'd say, oh, what can we do without you? And I'd be like, no, stop it right there. If this becomes a dependency, we're not in a good relationship. And so this is where I really struggle with marketing, because I find that challenging. It's not coherent for me.
What I love is that you'll have this audio to listen back to. And what I would ask you to listen to again with all of your tools that you have is the statement that you made to me that you're going broke because of the high turnover. So the immediate thing that happens in my brain is, you could probably see it easier from my business. So if I said to you, I work with people who have really sensitive pelvic health issues. So they're not just telling everyone, like Shannon helped me cure my incontinence issues just from some breath and movement and visiting my pelvic floor physiotherapist. Like, this team helped me. They're not telling all their friends that. They tell their close friends, but they don't tell the whole world. So if I said, well, if I help these people and then they're gone, which is what happens, and that's my goal. I love how you said that's one of your I believe statements for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Then how can I get new people? I could look and do a video on my private Facebook page, which I have done. It doesn't have to be just, hi, I'm Shannon, and this is what I do. It could be really sharing something pretty vulnerable, which I have done recently. But it may even just be like, I could take a picture of a pelvis and show. For you, I can really see it being helpful if you work with someone, you use a tool, and then you share that somewhere.
Right.
You're like, I was recently, and you can switch it up. You can say, I was recently working with a man, where it's a woman, and that way you're really protecting someone's identity.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I do on my newsletter, but I need to turn that into a social media thing. I think I need to expand that reach. Yeah.
And let's get to the point, if you don't enjoy social media, that you have someone hired and it won't take very much time. They take your newsletter and you say to them, I want it out in all of these places. I want it out on Facebook, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. And you tell them how you would like to customize it to the platform, because that works really well.
Right.
Or if your booking days are empty, that's what you do on those days.
Okay. Yeah. So social media replaces the appointments that didn't get filled.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, not always social media, but for you, I think that's
whatever needs marketing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Marketing replaces
yeah.
It's interesting what you said there about what works on the platform, because I only just recently realized, and this may be really obvious to a lot of people, but I had no idea. If you just post links, which is generally what I do, I post a link to my site with the blog or whatever. Apparently, that they don't share that. They don't.
No.
It's not clickable. You have to have original content.
Yes.
And put it up there. And so, which means for me, I'm like, what do I do there? So do I actually cut and paste my blog and then I put that up there? Or how does that, what do they mean by original content? It's really confusing to me.
So let's take one example. So if I write an article, I don't know, let's come up. Oh, just the astrology thing has me really curious. So I know nothing about astrology, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you even just posted like one snippet of information on Facebook, and it could just be the text. It doesn't have to be an image with it. I mean, if it has an image or a video, it's going to get out there further.
Right.
But say you create something on your Facebook page, even if it's a quick image or an image that captures it that you can use, it's not copyrighted, like an image of the moon or whatever. There's all kinds of sites that you can use for images. And then you write something above it, like it's the full moon, and this is a great time for it. Like I'm taking it back to real basics here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So just simple, like a clip of what I would have written already.
Yes. So something from your blog. And the great thing about a Facebook page is that you can schedule those posts out.
Right. Yeah. I did that the last time I went away. And I don't normally do it when I'm around, because I kind of do it in that way. That's sort of when I feel like it, which is probably not a good idea. But I should use the scheduler more often. And
there's a woman who does some great marketing on Instagram, Liz White, I want to say.
Okay.
What I love about her Instagram is she'll often show her choosing a card, like what do you call those cards? It's gone.
A tarot card.
Tarot card.
Oh, yeah.
And then you can kind of choose on Instagram, and then she'll read it out or she'll have it typed out. But you could think of something that really resonates with what you offer. Like maybe I love how your newsletter, it's at the new and the full moon. Even just saying on Facebook, every new and full moon, I send out a newsletter because I want it to be in sync with astrology.
Right.
Here's how you can sign up. Or the link is down below in the comments. Right. There are some ways to get away from that link. I just feel like the content that you're putting in.
Yeah, if you don't link, but I put a link in the comments, that they don't treat it the same way, I guess. It's treated as a special post. Okay, so that's the trick then. I just take the link out of the original post.
Yeah. I mean, video gets higher engagement than anything.
Video.
I don't know how you feel about video.
I dread video. I hate it.
That's why you're a writer.
Yeah.
If it's not your favorite way to share content, and it sounds like writing is, then that's okay.
Yeah. Now I'm just really, I guess I'm just basically shy. I'm just not. And I also I'm much more of I'm a toned down person. I'm not that kind of bubbly. Like a lot of people, when they do videos, they're like super bubbly and they're very effervescent and getting lots of interest built up around just their presentation. And I look at that and I think, God, never in a million years would that would come across so fake if I tried that, because it's
Right.
just not who I am.
You're
And
bringing in so many great topics where by the time this plays, we will have had an episode on live video.
okay,
And it's really about showing up as your authentic personality.
okay, yeah.
And that, you probably don't also resonate with the video when you put it on and someone's right in your face and they're super energized.
Yeah.
Well, you're not the only one.
Yeah.
So there are other people. And really, what you offer isn't anything about that. Like you might
No, that
consider,
that also is a contradiction, isn't it? It's like
yes.
telling people to calm down while I'm like popping champagne corks. It doesn't make sense. So yeah. No,
What
so
I
that's actually quite validating, just what you just said there. That's quite nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last thing that I'd like to leave with you is it sounds like you have so many things to offer. And so with that, that's where the message can get a little diluted. So when we're that type of person and we focus on a lot of things, I think it's great to have a time to focus just
Mhm.
on that, sort of like a season. And actually, what would be amazing is you can probably pick your seasons astrology based.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Mm.
when is the season to be really focused on those one on one bookings? When is it time to really promote your book? When is it time to really promote your retreat?
Well, this is actually, we can't really speak of seasons in terms of the calendar seasons, which makes it a bit tricky because one of the reasons my book was meant to be published tomorrow, which is and turns out to be the day that I have to go to Toronto to see my mom. Um, the the reason that I chose tomorrow is because it's an incredibly powerful, auspicious day, and so it doesn't matter. There are more, but I do choose things like the retreat that I'm doing in India. I specifically timed around astrology. I do that. I don't tell people that, although people who participate find out. But I don't advertise as such. But I definitely time my actions according to what will work with me rather than against me. And again, like tomorrow, it doesn't always work out. Life happens, and sometimes you just have to take action when it's not the ideal time. But I try to do that, but it's not consistent, you see? So it kind of pops up at different parts of the year. So it's not like I could say, oh, well, December is a great time to do this. It's just not. That's why, for example, New Year's resolutions in January fail usually because the energy is not behind them most of the time. It's like 1 year in 20, you might actually have the appropriate energy around that time of the month to launch something new. Very rare otherwise, we had
Yeah.
a new moon. I think it was like last year. We had a new moon on the 1st of January. It's like, yeah, go for it. Now you can do your resolutions. Do it. This is all working for you. But otherwise, it's pointless because it's just another day. The calendar day is quite irrelevant. So I do make that as part of my work. It is definitely part of what I do, but it doesn't always work out conveniently. Like I'm sure that would just drive any kind of business executive completely bonkers to know how I work and how I plan or don't plan accordingly. And but I genuinely follow that, in my little way, in my
Right.
very what appears to be very random way.
I love it. And you shared it here, and lots of people will connect and resonate with that. It'd be fun to see you share that out. Like tomorrow, you could make a post and say, I meant to launch my book today. And
Oh,
the reason I did was this. And the reason
right.
it didn't happen is this. And so I've picked my next day. I mean, just that alone is an honest, authentic post. People will resonate with, like, oh, you didn't hit a deadline. Like, how many of us are missing our deadlines? And it's nice just to know I messed up on the weekend at a yoga teacher training with some of the admin stuff. And the woman organizing it, she was like, I just love that you just messed up. It shows that I was like, okay. So people want to know that. We don't always want to share it, but I would look at that. And then the last thing that I want to ask you is if yoga teachers who are listening to this podcast want to reach out and book with you, how can they do that? Where's your website?
My website is called inspirationyoga.eu.
Okay. So we will go there if we are dealing with a transition, but also I hear like if we're launching something and we want to pick a really cool day to do that, if we are struggling, if we're stressed and dealing with illness. So I'm super excited to hear how this goes. I know I've given you a bit of homework, but it's been great to get to know you.
Thank you. And you too. And I just wanted to say to you as well that the platform you've created, the group that you've created on social media, is just such an amazing community. It's really remarkable. And people are really coming together in such a helpful way. And your attitude is kind of like the thread that runs through all of that. And it really is felt that way. And I really appreciate that because I'm sure that has been a very big amount of work for you to create. And it's a really huge support for lots of people.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for that feedback. It means a lot. It does.
Well, what you do in that forum means a lot to so many people. So it's really great. And that for me is a very useful role for social media. That is the reason I'm on Facebook.
Right.
It's a great thing to have beacons like that, these kind of groups and these support networks that really demonstrate that social media can be a great thing and that it doesn't have to be this all about me kind of thing. And so I really value that, and I wanted to thank you.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. That means a lot. And it also speaks to, we can use these tools and create what we want with them when we're really intentional and we have that goal.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much again, Susan, for letting our connected yoga teacher community listen in on your consultation call. I think it is going to really help those who are looking at niching down and marketing their unique yoga offering. So I want to hear from you, connected yoga teachers. What is your key takeaway? Is there something that you heard in today's consultation call with Susan and you thought, hey, I'm going to use that in my yoga business? One thing that you can try is to find a friend to talk to this week, someone who knows very little or nothing about yoga and what you offer. And can you tell them what you're working on? Can you describe your offering? And then can you answer their questions and have a way to sort of jot things down or record what they ask you? The more we can clarify our offer to someone who knows nothing about it, the more clear we can be in our marketing. Another idea, if you're looking for an actionable step, is to try out the 15 I believe statements that I talked to Susan about. I really love this for getting in and showcasing your true values and how they connect with the yoga that you are sharing and offering. If and when you're feeling like you are really needing a consultation call with me where we can take a look at your unique yoga business, go to theconnectedyogateacher.com, look under Work with Shannon, and you'll see how we can work together in a one-on-one call. Also, if you want to meet up in person, I'm going to be at the Toronto Yoga Show. That's March 29th to the 31st, 2019. And I will be teaching Mama Nurture both in Bermuda and Meaford, Ontario, starting in April 2019. So you can find all of that information on the connectedyogateacher.com under trainings. In November, on the weekend of the 2nd and 3rd in Meaford, Ontario, I'm sharing my 20-hour Yoga for Pelvic Health yoga teacher training. Okay, connected yoga teachers, it's time to sign off and say goodbye to 2018. So I want to know, what will you be doing this week to stay connected to yourself, to your yoga practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up?